Captain Ryan Delgado stepped out of the landing shuttle and felt the weight of alien air on his shoulders. The sky of Zenthara was a deep purple color, and the ground beneath his boots was hard and dark like polished stone. His team followed behind him. There was Lieutenant Maya Torres, who was smart and could think fast. There was Engineer David Kim, who knew how to fix anything. And there was Dr. Lisa Wang, a medical officer who had trained for this moment. Her whole life, the palace of the Zentharian Emperor was huge and made of white crystal that seemed to glow from inside. Guards stood at every entrance. The guards were tall and muscular, with blue skin that looked like it had been polished. They wore armor that covered their bodies completely. Their eyes were large and dark, and they watched the humans with interest and something that looked like doubt. A messenger led Ryan's team through the long hallways of the palace. The walls were covered with images of great battles and warriors. Each picture told a story of conquest and glory. Ryan studied the pictures as he walked. He noticed the weapons, the style of fighting, and the way the artists painted strength and honor. These small details would matter, he thought. Princess Sithala waited for them. In the great hall, she stood on a high platform, and her blue skin shined bright. She was tall, even taller than the guards, and she wore armor made of silver metal. A long sword hung at her side. Her eyes were cold and sharp as she looked down at the humans below her. When she spoke, her voice was like ice. "So these are the humans," she said slowly, "the ones who claim to speak for all their kind. You are smaller than I expected, weaker. Tell me, human captain, what brings you to our empire? Do you come to surrender, or do you come to die?" Ryan bowed respectfully. He had been taught the ways of the Zentharians. Before this mission, he knew that they valued honor and strength. He knew that they saw themselves as warriors, the best warriors in the galaxy. But he also knew something else. He knew that they did not understand how humans fought. "I come to speak about peace, Your Highness," Ryan said clearly. "I come to talk about a future where our two peoples do not have to fight, where we can trade and share knowledge and build something good together." The princess laughed, but it was not a happy sound. It was the sound of someone who found something funny but also sad. "Peace," she said. "You speak of peace as if war is a bad thing. War is how we prove who we are. War is how we test our strength. You cannot have peace without first showing that you can fight. These are the ways of honor. Can you fight, little human, or must I send you back to your small world?" Ryan felt all the eyes in the great hall looking at him. There were warriors and nobles and important people from the Zentharian Empire. They all waited to hear what he would say. This moment was important. This moment could change everything. "I did not come here to fight," Ryan said quietly but clearly. "I came here to understand. I came here to learn about your people, your ways, and your world. If you wish to talk, then I am ready. If you wish to fight, then I cannot stop you, but I can tell you that fighting will not help either of us. Understanding might." The princess's face became angry. Her hand moved of her sword, but she did not pull it out. Instead, she leaned forward. "You refuse to fight?" she asked. "A captain who will not fight? You are a coward then. A weak creature who hides behind words instead of facing the true test of strength. This is shameful." She stood up from her throne and walked down the steps toward Ryan. Her warriors moved with her, their hands ready for anything. The tension in the room was thick and heavy, like the air before a storm. You have 70 hours to prove the worth of your people, the princess said. She stood very close to Ryan. Now in this time you may walk through our palace, you may see our ways, but no. This human, at the end of 3 days, you will face me in combat, a true test of strength, or you will leave my father's empire and never return. This is not a choice, this is a fact. Ryan nodded. He understood what was happening. The Xanthurians could not accept his words. They could not understand the idea of peace without a fight. It was not in their nature. It was not in their blood. I accept your highness, he said. Over the next 3 days, Ryan did something that confused the guards and made the nobles talk in quiet voices. He walked through the palace and he watched the guards change at certain times. He watched where they walked and how they stood. He watched the pathways and doors and halls. He looked at the paintings on the walls. He asked small questions about the history of the Xanthurians. He asked about their weapons and their ships and their power. He said he wanted to understand them, and they, Xanthurians, proud of their great history, were happy to tell him. Maya noticed what Ryan was doing. She began to help him. She watched the structure of how the palace worked. She counted guards and studied patterns. David walked near the power generators and water systems. He made small notes about how the machines worked. Lisa talked with the doctors and healers, learning about Xanthurian biology and their medicines. They were not being careful about hiding what they were doing. They did not think they needed to be careful. But Princess Sithala began to feel something strange. She began to see the pattern. The humans were not just walking and looking, they were studying. They were watching in a way that felt like hunting. On the evening before the combat, the princess found Ryan standing alone in a corridor, looking at a map of the palace that hung on the wall. "What are you doing?" she asked sharply. Ryan turned to her and smiled calmly. I'm learning, Your Highness, just as you said I could." "You are stalking," she said. The word sounded angry and fearful. At the same time, "You move like a hunter who studies his prey. You are not acting like a warrior, you are acting like something else entirely." Ryan did not answer right away. He looked at the princess for a long moment, then he spoke. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "humans hunt differently than Xanthurians do." The princess felt a strange chill go through her body. For the first time since these humans arrived, she felt something that looked like fear. It was not the fear of a sword or a blow. It was the fear of something she did not understand, something that did not follow the rules. She knew. She turned and walked away without another word, but her thoughts were troubled. The next day would bring the combat. She did not know what to expect from this strange human captain. She did not know what his game truly was, and that somehow frightened her more than any weapon could have. Morning of the combat arrived with the strange purple light of Xanthara's sun breaking over the crystal palace. Ryan woke early and dressed in the simple black uniform of the United Earth Coalition. He did not wear any armor. He did not carry any weapons. Xanthurian guards who saw him walk to the combat arena looked at him with confusion and something that might have been pity. The arena was a large circular place, made of the same hard stone as the palace grounds. Thousands of Xanthurians had gathered to watch. Warriors stood at attention along the walls. The Emperor himself sat in a high seat watching, with an expression that showed no emotion. Princess Kathala stood in the center of the arena, already wearing her full battle armor. Her sword gleamed in the light. She was ready to fight. When Ryan walked into the arena, a great noise came from the crowd. Some warriors shouted insults, some laughed. The Zentarians could not believe that a human would come to fight their princess without even a weapon to defend himself with. "I will not fight you, Your Highness," Ryan said when he reached the center of the arena. The crowd became silent. The princess's face turned red with anger. "You refuse," she screamed. "You humiliate yourself and your entire race. You come all this way only to show that humans are cowards." "No," Ryan said calmly. "I refuse because there is another way to fight. There is another way to show the strength of my people, a way that does not require swords." He turned to face the Emperor and spoke loudly so that all could hear. "I have spent the last 3 days learning about your empire. I have studied your palace, your guards, your systems, and your ways. I have learned things that I now share with you." Ryan pulled out a document that was thick with papers and information. "I have created a complete map of your military installations. I have recorded the patterns of your guard rotations. I have measured the location of your power generators and water systems. I have identified the weaknesses in your command structure and defense protocols. I know the names of every official who disagrees with your current government. I know the design of every weapon you possess." The crowd began to make noise, but Ryan continued speaking. "This is how humans fight," he said, "not with strength of arms, but with strength of mind, not with swords, but with knowledge. In 3 days I have gathered enough information to understand exactly how to dismantle your entire civilization. I have not used any special technology. I have not used any weapons. I have simply watched, learned, and recorded what I found." The Emperor stood from his seat. The arena became completely silent. Every eye was on the old alien ruler. "If you understand how to dismantle our empire," the Emperor said slowly, "then you understand how to destroy us. Why do you not do this? Why are you here telling us this instead of attacking?" Ryan took a breath before answering. "Because destruction is not what we seek," he said. "Humans have learned through history that true power does not come from conquest. It comes from understanding. It comes from partnership. I am showing you what humans can do, not to threaten you, but to make you understand that we are worthy of respect. We are worthy of talking to as equals." He looked directly at Princess Kathala. "You wanted to know if humans can fight. The answer is yes. But we fight in ways that your warriors have never encountered. We fight by understanding the enemy better than they understand themselves. We fight with patience and observation and knowledge. Your armor cannot protect against intelligence." Maya stepped forward with a small computer device. She showed the Emperor detailed plans of the palace. She showed him recordings of guard movements. She showed him calculations about resource usage and supply chains. David Kim presented technical specifications of the Zenthorian power systems. He explained how they could be disrupted or disabled. Lisa Wang presented biological information about Zenthorian physiology that made several nobles uncomfortable. The Emperor listened to everything Without speaking, when they finished, he sat back down slowly. You have proven your point, he said finally. You have shown that humans can fight in ways we do not understand, but this means you are also a threat to us. How can we trust a people who can do such things? The same way we can trust you, Ryan said, through honest exchange, through building something together. Instead of fighting, the days that followed were strange and tense. The Emperor ordered that Ryan and his team be given access to study more of the Xanthuran Empire systems. He wanted to understand what else they might learn. The Xanthurians, proud and strong though they were, began to realize that there were other kinds of power that they had never developed. Princess Sithala did something unexpected. Instead of hiding from Ryan or treating him as an enemy, she began to follow him. She watched as he studied the palace and the city. She listened as he explained to her team how humans thought about strategy and information. She could not help but feel a strain respect for this human who had defeated her without throwing a single punch. One evening, as Ryan stood in the palace library reading about Xanthuran history, the princess found him there. You have changed how I see strength, she said to him without greeting. Strength comes in many forms, Ryan replied. I was trained my entire life to fight with a sword, Sithala said. I was taught that physical power was the only power that mattered, but now I see that I was blind. You have shown me that power can come from knowledge, from understanding, from the mind. Ryan closed his book and looked at her carefully. Does this frighten you? He asked. Yes, the princess said. Honestly, it frightens me more than any sword fight could, because I do not know how to fight against something I cannot understand, and I do not know how to defend against a kind of power that requires me to think in completely new ways. Then your training begins now. As the two of them began to talk about strategy and tactics, neither of them knew that this conversation would change the course of history. Neither of them knew that the future of two entire civilizations was being decided in this simple library, without any blood being spilled, without any weapons being used, and without any violence at all. 2 months had passed since Ryan arrived at Xanthara. In that time many things had changed. The Emperor had continued to allow the human team to study the Empire systems. Ryan and his people had been given access to military facilities, government buildings, and technological centers. The Xanthorians believed they were safe. After all, Ryan had been honest about his intentions. He had proven that he could gather information, but had chosen not to use it as a weapon. But then, without warning, a message arrived from the Xantharian Supreme Military Council. The message was formal and final. The Emperor had made a decision. Ryan was to face Princess Katala in single combat. No more delays, no more excuses. The date was set for 1 week away. The time for talking had ended. The time for fighting had come. When Ryan read the official decree, he was not surprised. He had expected this moment would arrive. The Xanthorians could not accept humans as equals for very long. Their culture was built on the idea that worth was proved through combat. Eventually, they would need to see blood spilled to understand the humans deserved respect. Princess Kathala came to him immediately after the announcement was made public. She found him in the chamber where he had been living during his stay in the palace. We must talk, she said, her usual Confidence seemed shaken. They walked together to the high tower of the palace, where no guards could hear them talk. The view from the tower showed the entire city of Zinthara spreading out. Below them, with its crystal buildings and metal pathways, my father is. Frightened, the princess said, he does not understand why you came here. He does not know what you want from us. I came to make peace, Ryan said simply. But how can there be peace if you have the power to destroy us? Sithala asked. Do you see, this is the problem. You have given us complete information about how to attack you. Now you have shown us how you gather intelligence and plan strategy. The Emperor believes that if he does not challenge you to combat, you will see him as weak. He believes you will then use what you have learned to take over his empire. Ryan looked out at the city and then back at the princess. That is because your father still thinks like a warrior, he said. He still believes that power means the ability to destroy. He cannot imagine a form of strength that does not require dominance. Then what do you suggest? Sithala asked. You have 3 days before the combat. What can you do in 3 days? Ryan smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been planning all along. I suggest nothing to your father, he said. I suggest something to you in 3 days when we are supposed to fight. Instead, I will ask for 1 hour alone with you. I will show you something and you will show your father. What will you show me? The princess asked. Everything, Ryan answered. The night before the combat was scheduled, Ryan met with his team in their secure quarters. He downloaded all the information they had gathered into a single device. Every map, every record, every plan, every analysis, everything. He organized it so that anyone could understand it, even without technical knowledge. This is the moment, he told them. Tomorrow we prove what humanity is truly capable of. The morning of the second combat day arrived. Thousands of Zinthurians gathered in the arena again. The Emperor sat in his high seat. Warriors stood ready. The crowd was excited, hungry to finally see combat, to finally see blood spilled. But Ryan did not fight. Instead, he stood in the center of the arena and called out for Princess Katala to come to him, not as a warrior but as a listener. I refuse to fight, he announced loudly. Not because I am weak, but because I have something more important to show you. He led the princess away from the arena, away from the crowds, to a private chamber. He placed the device before her and activated it. Information began to flow across screens. Detailed maps appeared, recordings of guard movements began to play, documents about internal politics appeared, data about every system in the Zintharian Empire was displayed. In the past 2 months, while your warriors believed I was harmless, I learned how to destroy your entire civilization, Ryan said quietly. I know where every military installation is located. I know the algorithm for your orbital defense system. I know the psychological profiles of your key military leaders. I know which officials would support a rebellion if the current government fell. I know which generals would follow whoever controlled the greatest military power. I know everything. Kafala watched the information flow past. Her face became pale. If I wanted to, Ryan continued, I could use this information to start a civil war within your empire. Your own people would tear your government apart. I could identify the weak points in your power generation systems and show your enemies how to disrupt them. I could work with other species that hate your empire and help them plan the perfect invasion. I could do all of this without ever raising a weapon myself. Why are you telling me this? The princess asked, her voice shook. Because I want you to understand something very important, Ryan said. This information is not a threat, it is proof that humans do not need to fight your way to prove our worth, proof that we are dangerous not because of our strength but because of our intelligence, proof that in 1,000 years of studying warfare the Zenthurians have never encountered an enemy like this. Cathala looked at him with eyes that shone both fear and wonder. If you can do all of this, she said, why have you not done it? Because true strength is knowing you have the power to destroy something and choosing not to, Ryan said. That is the power that humans possess. That is what separates a warrior from a thinking being. A warrior destroys because they can. A thinking being chooses when and how to use power. I have come here not to threaten you but to teach you this lesson. The princess suddenly understood. She understood that this human had indeed conquered her entire empire, not with weapons, not with violence, but with knowledge and patience and intelligence. And worst of all, he had done it while everyone watched. She had watched him do it and had not even realized what was happening. You have beaten me, she said finally. I have, Ryan agreed. But I have not destroyed you. I have shown you something better. I have shown you that there is a form of strength you have never trained for, and now you must decide, will you let your pride keep you from learning, or will you accept that humans are worthy of being your partners? Cathala left the chamber and walked to where her father waited. She stood before the emperor and spoke words that would change history. Father, she said loudly so all could hear, the human has beaten me, not in combat but in something far more significant. He has proven that humans possess a form of power we have not developed. I ask you to stop this fighting. I ask you to negotiate peace with them. I ask you to make them our allies instead of our enemies. The emperor rose from his seat. He looked at his daughter and then he looked at Ryan. A long moment of silence filled the arena. It seems, the emperor said finally, that we have much to learn from these humans. The Zentharian War Council met in the chamber deep below the palace. This was where the most important decisions about the empire had been made for thousands of years. The oldest and most respected generals sat around the long table. They had conquered countless planets. They had expanded the empire across dozens of star systems. They had never known defeat. But today they were different. Today they were afraid. Emperor Kraft sat at the head of the table. His blue skin seemed darker than usual. Beside him stood Princess Cathala. And facing all of them, standing alone, was Captain Ryan Delgado. Tell them, the emperor said to his daughter. Cathala presented the information that Ryan had gathered. She showed the maps and the plans. She displayed the recordings of guard movements. She revealed the analysis of weak points in their defenses. The generals watched with growing horror as they realized how exposed their great empire actually was. One of the oldest generals, a warrior named Thenox who had led many battles, stood up angrily. This human is a spy, he declared. He has stolen our secrets. He should be executed immediately. That is true, Ryan said calmly. I have learned you Secrets, but consider this: if I am executed, what prevents the next human that arrives from doing the same thing? What prevents all the other species in the galaxy from doing this? How will you defend against an enemy you cannot see? Thenox's face turned red with anger. We will defend as we have always defended, with strength and warriors and weapons. But that is exactly what you cannot do. Ryan said. He stepped forward and pointed to the maps on the wall. Your warriors are excellent fighters. Your weapons are powerful, but they cannot fight an enemy that gathers information. They cannot fight an enemy that plans from a distance. Your traditional warfare is designed for enemies who fight the way you fight, but not all enemies fight that way. He looked at each general in turn. Humanity has fought many species, he continued, some stronger than us, some faster than us, some with better weapons than us, but we have always found a way to win. We have won by understanding, by seeing patterns, by planning carefully, by knowing the enemy better than the enemy knows themselves. An older general, one who had seen many wars, spoke up. His name was Kesich, and his voice was calm. What are you suggesting? He asked. I am suggesting that the future of warfare has changed, Ryan said. Time of warriors meeting warriors in open battle is ending. The future belongs to those who can think better than their enemies, those who can see farther, those who can plan more carefully, those who can understand complex systems. He paused and then continued. The Xantharians are excellent warriors, but you have not trained your minds the way you have trained your bodies. Your military strategy is based on honor and direct combat, but your enemies will not fight by your rules. Your enemies will use intelligence and information the way you use swords. Another general spoke. Then what do you propose? That we should stop training warriors, that we should become like you, hiding behind information? No, Ryan said firmly. I propose something better. I propose that you train warriors who are also thinkers, warriors who understand not just how to use a sword, but how to understand an enemy's mind, warriors who know both combat and strategy, warriors who can fight on a battlefield and also plan the entire war from a distance. The emperor leaned forward with interest. How would such warriors be trained? He asked. By combining Xantharan strength with human knowledge, Ryan said. Let us create a military academy together, place where Xantharan warriors learn human strategic thinking, where they learn to analyze and plan, where they learn the art of information gathering and intelligence analysis, and perhaps humans could learn from you as well. We could learn the discipline and courage that comes from your training, Princess. Katala stood up. She was no longer the angry princess who had demanded combat. She was something new. She was a leader who had learned to see the world in a different way. I volunteered to lead this academy, she said. I will learn from Captain Delgado. I will master this new form of fighting, and I will teach our people. Over the following weeks, the details of the alliance were worked out. It was not an easy process. There were moments when the generals threatened to end the negotiations. There were times when the humans had to prove their good intentions, but slowly something new was born. The joint military academy of Xanthara Earth was built on the border between their territories. Xantharian warriors and human strategists worked side by side. Young Xantharian soldiers learned to analyze enemy movements from a distance. They learned to think about supply chains and communication lines. They learned to see battles as systems of complex parts instead of simple tests of strength. And humans learned from the Xenthorians. They learned discipline and focus. They learned how to move as a unified force. They learned the value of direct communication and honor. They learned that sometimes the oldest methods of warfare still had value. General Frenox, the one who had been most opposed to the alliance, actually became one of its greatest supporters. He learned that intelligence made warriors stronger, not weaker. He learned that a soldier who understood strategy was more valuable than a soldier who could simply swing a sword harder. Princess Cathala spent long hours with Ryan studying human military history and philosophy. She learned about famous generals who had won battles through intelligence instead of strength. She learned about wars that were decided by understanding terrain and logistics instead of brave charges. She learned that her father had been wise to accept the alliance. 6 months into the Academy's operation, a test came. A pirate fleet from an enemy species attacked a Xenthoran station. The response was swift and decisive. The Xentarian forces analyzed the pirate movements, predicted their strategy, and positioned their ships perfectly. The battle was over in minutes with minimal losses. The pirates did not even know what hit them. General T.A. Charnock stood with Ryan afterward and looked at the reports. Your people were right, Thenox said. This new way of fighting is powerful, more powerful than we imagined. And your people have shown us that tradition and strength still matter. Ryan replied, together we are stronger than either of us alone. The Emperor issued a new proclamation to all the galaxies. The message was simple and clear. The Xentarian Empire and the United Earth Coalition were now allies. They would share knowledge and defense, and they would show the galaxy what was possible when two very different species chose to understand each other instead of fighting. For the first time in her long life, Princess Cathala felt something she had never felt before. It was not the pride of victory in combat. It was something deeper. It was the satisfaction of understanding something new. It was the joy of becoming something more than what she had been before, and she realized with surprise that this feeling was more powerful than any sword could ever be. The age of pure warrior combat was ending. The age of strategic intelligence was beginning. And humanity, with its patience and its love of knowledge, had shown the way forward. 1 year had passed since Ryan Delgado first stepped foot on Xenthora. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The alliance between humans and Xenthorians had become the most powerful force in known space. Their combined military was unmatched. Their technology had advanced faster than anyone thought possible. And most importantly, they had shown that peace could be built on understanding instead of fear. The diplomatic station floated in space between the two civilizations. Territories, it was a beautiful structure, part human design and part Xenthorian architecture. Both species had worked together to build it, and it represented the best of what both cultures could offer. Trading vessels from dozens of other species now arrived regularly, eager to work with the powerful alliance. Ryan Delgado stood on the observation deck looking out at the stars. It was his favorite place in the station. From here he could see the vast emptiness of space and think about everything that had happened. Princess Sithala found him there, as she often did in the late hours of the day. She had become the co-commander of the Joint Military Academy, and she spent most of her time training the next generation of warriors. Her uniform was different now. It was still Zentharan armor, but it also incorporated human tactical gear. The sword at her side had been forged by human masters and Zentharan crafters, working together. "You are thinking about how strange this is," she said, standing beside him and looking out at the same stars. Ryan smiled. He had come to know her very well over this year. He could almost read her mind sometimes. "I was thinking about that first day," he said, "when you asked me if I could fight, when you demanded that I prove myself through combat." Then she spoke, and her voice was soft. "I was a fool," she said simply. "No," Raya replied. "You were what your culture had made you. You were a warrior, because that was all you knew. I do not blame you for that, but you did fool me," the princess said. She turned to look at him directly. "You came to my empire and pretended to be weak. You came and asked to talk, and I thought you were a coward. All the while you were studying, all the while you were learning how to destroy everything I loved, and I never even saw it. I had to be careful," Ryan explained. "If I had shown my true capabilities too early, your father would have ordered my execution. If I had been openly aggressive, we would have fought, and many would have died on both sides. Only way to bring peace was to show that I posed such a great threat that fighting would be foolish. And the only way to show that without violence was to gather information." Kathala nodded. Slowly, she had understood this for months, but it still troubled her. "Somehow what frightened me most," she said, "was that I could not see it happening. You moved through our palace like a ghost. You asked innocent questions, and I did not realize they were not innocent at all. You studied our systems as if you had every right to be there, and we let you because we thought we were strong enough to handle any threat. That was the point," Ryan said gently. "Strength is not just physical power, it is also awareness. It is knowing what is happening around you. It is understanding threats before they arrive. The Zenthurians have always been strong in combat, but you were not strong in defense against intelligence gathering. Now you are different. Now you train both warriors and thinkers." They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars. Then Kathala spoke again. "Your team," she said, "Maya Tors and David Kim and Lisa Wunk, they have all left to take positions in the human fleet, but you stayed." "Why?" Ryan was quiet before answering. "Because there was still work to do," he said finally. "Because the Alliance needed someone who understood both cultures. Because I believe that what we were building here was important, more important than any position I could hold anywhere else." Kathala turned away from the window and looked directly at him. In her blue eyes, Ryan saw something he had never expected to see. He saw respect, true, deep respect, not the respect that comes from someone being afraid of you, but the respect that comes from truly understanding what someone has accomplished. "I have learned much from you," she said. "Not just about strategy and intelligence. I have learned about what it means to be strong in ways I never knew existed. I have learned that the greatest power is not the power to destroy, but the power to build, the power to create something new, the power to make enemies into allies." She paused and then continued, "I have also learned That you are dangerous, Ryan Delgado. More dangerous than any warrior I have ever faced. And that is why I trust you. More than I have ever trusted anyone. Ryan felt something change inside him. This alien princess who had started as his enemy had become something much more important. She had become his partner. She had become someone who understood him. The next group of students at the academy, Ryan said, changing the subject, but not really. They are excellent, some of the best Synthorian warriors I have ever seen, and yet they understand strategy better than most human officers. That is because you taught us well, Sithala said with a slight smile. You taught us that every part of warfare is connected, that you cannot separate the warrior from the thinker, that to be truly strong, you must be both. A message came to Ryan's communication device, an alarm. There was a threat developing on the outer edge of their space. A fleet of enemy ships was massing, an old threat from an old enemy. The Alliance would need to respond. Ryan and Kathala looked at each other. They had trained for this moment. They had prepared for this exact situation. Come, Kathala said, we have war to win. But as they walked together toward the tactical command center, Ryan felt the difference in how he thought about this situation. There would be no surprise attack, no desperate battle. There would be strategy, there would be intelligence, there would be careful planning. The Zenthorians would move their ships to perfect positions. Humans would gather information about enemy movements. Together they would understand the threat before the threat even realized it had been discovered. The enemy would arrive thinking they were attacking an unprepared civilization. Instead, they would find a force that had studied them for weeks. They would find warriors who had also learned to think. They would find humans who had learned the value of strength and courage, and they would find defeat swift and complete without understanding how it had happened. As Ryan and Sithala worked together at the command center with human officers and Zenther generals standing side by side, Ryan thought about his original mission. He had been sent to negotiate peace. He had done that, but not the way anyone had. The enemy would be destroyed by forces they could not even comprehend, and humanity would have proven once more that the greatest weapon was not the sword but the mind. As the first enemy ship was destroyed by a perfectly placed Zenthuran strike, guided by intelligence that had been gathered weeks earlier, Princess Kathala looked at Captain Ryan Delgado and nodded with respect. Well played, human, she said. Very well played indeed. And Ryan Delgado, who had come to Xanthura to talk about peace and had instead taught an entire civilization a new way to think about power, smiled and began planning the next move. The future of the galaxy had been decided not in battle but in understanding, not in violence but in knowledge, and that was a victory greater than any physical conquest could ever